Well, greetings, everyone. Salutations, as John would say. My name is Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here to answer some extra questions from John's Joker spoiler video. I love doing this. I love when he asks me to do this. I feel like, well, I get to do something new and unique, and I get to talk more to you. So let's just, I don't know, start. We got Min Tran here. Min Tran has two questions. There's a chance that Thomas Wayne was lying and he did forge the documents. He's a massive prick. Either way, Arthur was right. He had nothing to lose. If Wayne was lying, he has a dad that refuses to acknowledge him. If Wayne was truthful, he has a mother that let him get abuse. You know, I think that's interesting. I do think that there's enough ambiguity there that we don't really know. I think with his mother, it's wishful thinking. But whether that was Alfred or whoever that was helping young Master Bruce when Arthur Fleck went to discuss matters with them, there's enough ambiguity there to maybe there's something there. Who knows? I don't know. Did he really go to Arkham? I mean, my whole thing is, why did they just let Arthur Fleck walk into Arkham Asylum or whatever it was and just get his records? Why would they let him do that? It was a little sketchy to me. I don't know. Collins E says, I'm okay with the Wayne murders shown here. It's thematically appropriate with the film. I just hope Reeves leaves this aspect of Batman alone. Yeah, maybe it wasn't so bad, but again, I thought it was a little lackluster. I thought Martha Wayne's acting, I don't know the actress playing her, little stiff. I thought the whole thing was staged a little wacky, but again, maybe it wasn't supposed to be the way it appeared. Min Tran continues on. I think what he means by comedy is that up to that point, he views his life and himself as nothing but a big joke, nothing to live for, just a pathetic joke. Very insightful. I think you actually are right about that. Again, my big problem with the film was I didn't see that Arthur Fleck had a lot of intelligence going on. He seemed kind of like a sad little man, and it really bothered me. And I understand by the time we get to the end of the movie, which was it happening? Did it really happen? I think there's arguments to be made both ways, but I didn't see Arthur as well the sharpest tack or he was a couple of cans short of a six pack, and I wanted him to be smarter. But that's just me. I understand it was about mental illness, an incredible portrayal, really true to life, and devastating, really. Bestie14 says, I would be fascinated if they did a sequel in the same way called Wayne, pre-Batman, but we see the other side of the coin and turning tragedy into a positive to see an older Bruce visit Arthur in prison. Interesting idea. I don't know if they do that. I like the idea, though. Raymond Verada says, Joaquin did a great performance, but the audience was awfully quiet afterwards. Instead of cheering and clapping, they felt more disturbed than amazed. You know what, Raymond? I think it's spot on. I certainly did. You know, it's not exactly the feel-good movie of 2019. I think you're supposed to feel stunned and shocked and amazed. I mean, I certainly was, and not necessarily in a good way. However, the filmmaking on display certainly was amazing, and Joaquin Phoenix's performance, one for the ages. My God. Andreas Ramirez says, did you notice these super rats in the background of certain scenes? They would walk around a building and under some trash, and yes, they looked huge. Yeah, I mean, again, everyone who knows me knows I'm very into verisimilitude, and there was a lot of that, and the super rats were definitely there. Absolutely. Daniel Fitzpatrick says, no idea the girl wasn't there until people said. I don't know. I never thought Zazie Beetz was his romantic partner. I always thought it was a fantasy. So that reveal kind of fell a little flat for me because I was expecting it. I didn't realize that we weren't supposed to expect it. I thought it was telegraphed pretty well throughout the movie. Daniel Fitzpatrick says, talk show scene, never felt so anxious in a movie. Me either. I thought De Niro was great in that scene. You could feel the tension ratcheting up. You just knew that it was going to explode and it wasn't going to be pretty. Really liked how they did that. Ryan Loner says, SNL spoiled the ending last night. Good thing I'd already seen it so I could be here. Really? I didn't see that on SNL. Why would they do that? Opening weekend? Collins E says, when the actuals come in, this R-rated introspective October release may end up making more opening week than Justice League. Well, I'll tell you, it's certainly doing bang up business. I mean, worldwide, we're at 230 million over the weekend. Domestically, at 93 million. Really incredible numbers. Joker is placing in those box office boards. Amazing. Froigon Jin says, Froigon Jin, much the same way that Robert Downey Jr.'s off-screen issues made him perfect for the Tony Stark character, Phoenix's eccentricity made him perfect for Joker. Could not agree with you more. I mean, he's had a long career. As somebody pointed out today, he was in Space Camp. So we've been seeing Joaquin for a long time. I loved him as Commodus and Gladiator, and that was almost 2 decades ago. Amazing. River Hippo Tuber says, Arthur's girlfriend relationship and the reveal that the reality was my least favorite and most favorite part of the movie. Well, if you didn't know it was coming, it was pretty shocking. And man, how depressing. I do think he absolutely, yes, indeed, was sitting in Zazie Beetz' apartment when she came in, and she was absolutely terrified of him. They were friendly in the hallway the way neighbors can be, but even she knew he was not quite right in the head. Hollowed Love says, why would I steal a going out of business sign? I think just to mess with somebody. And, you know, the way the economy goes up and down, you never know when you might just need a going out of business sign. Ben Burnside says, 1 of 2. My big takeaway from watching the movie was actually not the movie. It instead was about how early movie reviews are affecting my movie-going experience for movies like these. Instead of being blown away, I'm just satisfied with the movie instead. I wish I could love it while in the theater. You know what, Ben? That's a really good point. You know, we're being set up to they expect us to feel a certain way about a film we haven't even seen yet. It is getting a little bit annoying. I mean, I guess the way to stop that is from staying off the internet, but why should you do that? Why should you have to do that? But you're absolutely right. I mean, I think expectations are tainting the movie-going experience, both pro and con, and I think you're absolutely right there. Cool Some XD says, it might be Joker versus Irishman at the Oscars. Cool as Some XD, you know what, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know if it's going to be a clean sweep, but I expect Irishman to be getting not only the acting and directing accolades and cinematography, but also visual effects. It's going to be amazing, but I think definitely Joaquin's performance is going to be up there as far as actors are concerned. I don't know if anyone's going to take acting awards from Irishman, but I do expect it to take Best Picture. Luke Blackwell says, where is Joker on your best comic book movies list? You know what? I don't know if it would be on my best comic book movies list, because I think it's an animal unto itself. It's something new. I've been saying on John's show that it's transcended the comic book genre, but if you don't want to go that route, it's definitely up there. But usually, you know, comic book movies, I want to enjoy a movie the way I enjoy comic books. I really enjoy them. I like the art form a lot. I've always got them around. I mean, heck, I've been reading here, can you see it? Heroes in Crisis. And so I wanted to love this as a comic book film, but I think it transcends it. So I don't know if it's going to be on my list. I have to see how time will tell. But it's definitely an amazing film. Evelyn Jaquera Curas. Yeah, Curas. I just got out of it, and boy, Joaquin is amazing. Why, yes, he is. Thomas Kellner says, hi, John. What powerful movie. Loved it. A movie that channeled today's society as a whole towards the end. You know what? One of the things I really did like about that was this uprising that Arthur inspired, even if he didn't know that he had inspired it. I thought it was very, very interesting. But yeah, I think you're right. Aiden Foley says, I love all of the MCU and some DCEU. Joker is the best comic book movie I've ever seen. It's so different and unsettling. It's brilliant, personally. A lot of people feel that way. I don't think you're wrong. But yeah, and I think what's great is that we're getting this kind of cinema within the genre, which is great. Daniel McBreen says, hey, John, I got to see the movie yesterday and I really enjoyed it. I thought the take on the laughing disorder was brilliant. If you don't mind, can you share your thoughts on that aspect of the character? Thanks. Well, I personally thought that was a brilliant idea, that there's an actual affliction that makes you laugh at inappropriate moments. I can't think of anything much more horrific than that. I mean, my God, how awkward and embarrassing. And I really felt for him. I'm like, God, that would be a terrible thing to have happen. I mean, imagine if you're on some date and you're trying to be all cool and you have a laughing jag in the most inappropriate time. I mean, what do you do when you see a movie and you start laughing at things that aren't funny at all? It was really chilling. I really liked how they used that a lot. Samuel Lassio says, was his rescue at the end even real? Love the film. You know what, Samuel? I don't think it was. I'll tell you why. The car that he's in, the police car, is hit by an ambulance that's being driven by a Joker, a guy in a Joker mask. I thought that was all wishful thinking. I thought it was all in his mind. And then, of course, at the end, it cuts to him in the asylum where apparently he kills his therapist. I do think that end scene with the whole uprising was in his mind. Absolutely. Josh Jones, 1 of 2, says, really love the movie. Phoenix was unreal. My biggest issue with the film was the representation of Thomas Wayne. He's always been a good man in this. He did not care about the common man. I thought Thomas Wayne was done dirty in this movie. I thought it was very one-dimensional how they made everybody who had any money or worked in the financial sector was just immediately evil. I thought that was, again, the movie was above that, and apparently it wasn't. But yeah, I thought that the sniveling Thomas Wayne in the film that was untrustworthy and really just kind of a dick was not my favorite aspect of the film. So I agree with you. John Michael Ozada says, hi, John, which parts did you think were real? You know, I thought most of the beginning was real. Of course, when he first was in the comedy clubs and they sort of eased you in to the reality of it. I thought when he saw Zazie Beetz and said hello and those kinds of things. I thought when he was at work with his, I wouldn't call them friends, but coworkers, all of that was real. But those flourishes certainly got unreal as the movie moved along. Sebastian Trulio says, will stupid controversy affect Oscar nominations? I don't think so. I think the controversy, now that everyone's seen the movie and they realize that the violence in the film does not glorify violence. It's a horrifying film. The violence was portrayed to be horrifying, and I think people are going to really understand what it is. Look, as much as I wanted more philosophy and more out of the movie, it is no doubt working for a lot of people. It's very polarizing. It started a conversation about mental illness, and it's who would have thought that we would have had that from a comic book film? So if nothing else, the movie is a zeitgeist moment, and we can't take that away from it. Mintran says, or by comedy, he could mean his life is a big joke on him, similar to Lucifer at the end of season 1. Very astute. I think you might absolutely be right about that. Unjust Tiffid Gaming, approximately 250 million opening weekend, blew my socks off. Well, Unjust Iffy Gaming, if you're, I'm not sure what that is, but maybe, but I can say it's unjust. Amazing. It's amazing how much it made, especially in light of how much it cost, which by all accounts is mid 50s or 60s. So it's a huge hit already, and it's been open for 3 days. PJ Barnes says, the thing about mental illness is everyone expects you to act like you don't have one. God, what I'd pay to get a copy of that notebook. Yeah, between the pornographic pictures and the ramblings of an unsane mind, great stuff. Lawrence Reed says, I love the movie. However, a colleague of mine called it sexist, racist, and ableist. I don't see how. Do you have any thoughts on this? You know what? If that's what they take away, I think everything that your friend said is part of what the movie's about. I think indeed it's got sexism, racism, and ableism in it. And that's what it's supposed to have in it to start the conversation to not be that way. And yeah, I certainly don't think the movie glorifies any of those things. And I think that's an unnecessarily woke perspective on something when that was kind of the point of the movie in the first place. David Goldstein says, my first movie with A-List. Loved it. Really enjoyed what they did as far as why he laughs. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying A-List. And absolutely, I think why he laughs, it's a big part of the film. It's amazing. Gary Ritchie says, after he got out of the fridge, his pained and uncontrollable laughter was gone, even though he was off his meds. I think he might have died there. There is something to be said for that. that is one reading of the film I definitely think is valid. Krypton Cage says, John, after seeing the ending, Asylum, do you think it was Joker telling the entire movie as one of his false narrative origin stories? There are enough inconsistencies in the movie to suggest that it couldn't be all real. Oh, I think it's not all real, but you know what? I think that's as good of an interpretation as any, because when we get to the end of the movie and he's in his padded cell and he's talking to a woman that seems to be the same woman, just a different representation of her, and then it's heavily insinuated that he kills her. He tells the story. Once he's unloaded, unburdened himself, he takes her out. I think that's absolutely part of what was going on. Krypton Cage goes on and says, it was a brilliant way to end the movie, real or not. Either way, this movie is an effing masterpiece. John and I effing loved it. Todd and Joaquin ruled. XS Your Disease says, I don't agree with pundits saying Todd Phillips needs to have a response to the film's message. The film speaks for itself. I agree. We don't need every film broken down by its own creator. That's not art. 100% with you. I couldn't agree more. The film doesn't provide easy answers, nor should the director. That's what we as an audience is there to do. PJ Barnes says, did you notice after he killed his mom, there was a scene of him looking at an old picture of her, signed with a sweet note from TW? Almost missed it. Sounds like Thomas is the daddy. Maybe, or she just adopted a kid. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely ambiguous. I know in the first, from what I understand, in the first drafts of the script, it was very much that he was the illegitimate son of Thomas Wayne. But again, I think that's doing a disservice to a beloved character. Thomas Wayne's always been a good man who brought up Bruce well, and to besmirch him like that, I mean, it goes along with the film, absolutely. I mean, it does set up part of why the Joker is the way he is, but, you know, it was a little like, come on, really? But I think case could be made. He was the dad. Superman Steve said, how long did it take you to paint your face for the thumbnail? Brilliant job. Well, I can't answer that. I'll have to throw that one back to John. I'm just going to say it took all day. It's Atticare. Care? So he committed suicide in the fridge, and the rest of the movie was his Jacob's Ladder, or his occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, whatever you prefer. I think that's very astute, and I think that's a great reading of the film. Absolutely. Jeremy Hobson says, the steps had meaning every time we see him go up. He was more of a broken man, but the one time we see him come down, he is truly born again. Thoughts? Great. I thought that myself. I think it's a great assumption. I think that's a great get. Isn't that when Gary Glitter is finally playing too? Rock and Roll Part 2. I mean, the man was liberated. He becomes the Joker. Absolutely true. Jason Espinoza says, what about the ROUSs? I'm not sure what that is. I know it's something, but I'm drawing a blank on that right now. Penny Unwise says, I left Joker feeling like I had a much-needed cleansing from rinse and repeat Marvel formula. This movie made me feel something, finally. Well, Penny, I mean, I think that if it did, and did it leave you feeling good about that, or did you feel bad about yourself? But at least you're feeling something. That's always the mark of great cinema. Daryl Best Wadley says, disappointed he didn't kill the audience like in the comics. I know, I keep seeing those panels from Dark Knight. Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, and yeah, I like that. But I don't think we were there yet. I don't think the Joker was that diabolical yet. But I would like to have seen that, because why not? Jose Hernandez says, you get what you deserve, and that's life. Yep, it's true. The musical choices in the movie are pretty amazing. Silver Stang 007 says, I loved it, but do you think they will do another one with him doing more Joker-type things? Listen, if the movie makes tons of money, why wouldn't they bring him back? I just don't know if Joaquin Phoenix would want to do that again. And again, if you go doing more Joker-type things, then it becomes more of a traditional comic book movie, which means you miss the point of what they did in the first place. So I don't know about that. I don't know if that's necessarily such a good thing, but we'll definitely see. Jay Boogie says, this is my favorite movie of the year. However, this isn't a comic book movie. There was no wrestling between good and evil characters. Also, the Joker did not appear until the last 20 minutes. I am right there with you. I think one of the great things about this movie is it's not a comic book movie. It's different than anything we've seen before. You are absolutely correct. Red Cap sends in a super chat, I would imagine. Thank you for supporting the channel, Red Cap. I don't know what it is, though. Francisco Ramirez says, what were your thoughts regarding the Zazie Beetz reveal? At first I thought it was dumb how fast they ended hooking up, but the twist made it work for me. You know, I saw it was coming. I never believed they were together, so the confirmation just made me think I was smarter than maybe I am, but I'm glad that they didn't hook up. She seemed smarter than that, and the fact that she was a single mom. Basically, she was the good version of Arthur's mom, and I think that's he saw that. Like when he goes into her apartment, I think that was absolutely real, and she was terrified. I thought that was a great counterpoint to what Arthur probably had to go through growing up as an abused kid. Jim Riley says, Arthur didn't want to start a movement. He just wanted acceptance and recognition. Also, it didn't feel like a comic book movie, which I appreciated. Well, Jim, I totally agree. That's what made it. I think that's what makes the movie interesting and special, is that it is not your traditional comic book film, and it is not your traditional comic narrative, which is amazing. Johnny the WizKid says, your impressions of Jack Nicholson and Heath as the Joker. You mean Heath, I would say. I love both Jack Nicholson and Heath Ledger for different reasons. Jack Nicholson, it was weird watching a megastar like Jack Nicholson, who I grew up watching, in that role. But he was so good in it. I liked him before he became the Joker, too. I thought he was terrific, whereas Heath Ledger was more like a chaos bringer, like the Loki of Norse mythology. I mean, he was the post 9/11 chaos bringer, and I thought it was great. Both very, very different. I mean, Jack Nicholson is more it's hard to compare the two, because Tim Burton's Batman does not take place in the real world, quote unquote real world, whereas Heath Ledger and the Nolan films are much more naturalistic and do kind of give us a sense what it would be like if Batman did exist in our world. So I really like Jack Nicholson. It's a fun performance, but it's Heath Ledger's performance that really gets under my skin, and I really admire him, and I can't take my eyes off him, and I feel that Heath Ledger's performance has a lot more to do with our world today than Jack Nicholson, and that's why I enjoy it. Johnny the WizKids, I just answered that. Ben Burnside says, I've missed the info that was revealed when Arthur viewed the medical documents of his mom. What was the reveal, and what did you think of that scene? Well, the fact that his mother was, I think, nuts, and we saw those flashbacks into her cell and the kind of woman she was. I mean, up until that point, I don't think Arthur, he might have had flashbacks or something, but to know and to find out that he was abused the way he was, and that his mother was truly evil and crazy, if that was in fact true, I think there's a case to be made. But that was pretty shocking. Those flashback scenes were unexpected, and I think if there's anything, I think both we, the audience, and Arthur himself are like, oh man, no wonder he had such a bad life. I mean, he was getting a revelation as to insight into why he was the way he was, and it was painful, and it was sad, and wow, it was, yeah. Atticara says, so he committed suicide in the fridge. Oh, we already asked that, I think. Yes, you did ask that. I think that's a good reading of the film. I think possibly. I think this has become my favorite movie of all time. A true broken man at the peak of his brokenness. This is real life. It is. I agree with you. I think it's really amazing. But after a period of time passes, do you think that kind of movie is going to still be your favorite movie of all time? I mean, Clockwork Orange and The Godfather are my favorite movies of all time, so maybe so. It certainly is a raw portrayal that you don't get to normally see on the screen, and it is very well done. So I can understand why you're coming at it that way. Joss Angeles says, love the movie, but very disturbing. Like Schindler's List, I will not view it again, and that is a compliment. Well, Joss Angeles, first of all, great name. I understand it's rough, and it's supposed to be rough, and it is terrifying, and it is not a pleasant experience. Josh Quick says, hey, John, did anybody tell you that you kind of look like Joaquin Phoenix? Well, I can't answer that. I've never thought that, but I think I'm going to have to look close at John next time I see him. And wow, that's pretty interesting. Eddie Burton says, any actual chances of an Oscar nomination after seeing it? Oh, I think absolutely. I think there's going to be a lot of Oscars for whether they're technical Oscars. I think score it's going to get nominated for. I think cinematography, perhaps direction, and for sure Joaquin Phoenix is going to get nominated for his performance. BKA Watts says, I don't think Joaquin Phoenix and Ledger's Jokers are that different. They feel like, or it feels like Joaquin Phoenix's was in infancy and could definitely become Ledger's Joker over time. Am I bugging? You know what, BKA Watts? I never thought about that, but watching you so eloquently and succinctly lay that out, I'm like, you know what? I think you're onto something. I think you're onto something there. I could buy into that. I absolutely could. Carlos A says, as of now, where do you rank this movie in your list of top DC films? Well, I think it's probably definitely the best movie to come out of DC, the DCEU. Certainly a different movie. It's the most prestigious movie. But I have to tell you, I'm like John. I think I'm still a Man of Steel fan. I have to say it's got to be Man of Steel and Wonder Woman for me, really. Yeah, but I'm looking to Matt Reeves' Batman. I think it'll be great. Tristan Thorpe says, before I had mixed feelings about this movie because it's a Joker origin movie, and after seeing it, I fucking loved it. I love that this movie felt like it was formed around the "all it takes is one bad day" quote, which I think it was, but I think Arthur Fleck had one bad life. It was not just one bad day for him. It was a culmination of his horrible life and his situation. And it was sad. Ryan Lohner says, obscure reference for you. The fridge reminded me of Jim Prophet climbing into a box. Jim Prophet from the show Prophet, I think. I don't know. That's pretty obscure. Javier Belmer says, what a mind game that you're constantly hoping Arthur succeeds and he does free himself. But the reality is he spirals more into chaos. So you root for him, but you also stop and think, should I really? That's one of the greatest things about this movie, is you want something to happen for him, but then, you know, even his douchebag coworker who gives him the gun, when Arthur finally takes him out and smashes his head against the wall, I was both horrified and like, that guy had it coming. So you got to love any movie that makes you think and puts you on your toes and makes you wonder, what should I be thinking? Loved it. Tristan Thorpe says, I felt stupid not seeing the Waynes getting killed in this movie, and honestly, when it happened, I almost wanted to clap out loud. I'm so bad. No, you're not so bad. We all wanted that Batman connection. I just thought it was a little too much to maybe put in this movie, and that the Joker riots or whatever were why they were killed. I think in a way that sort of undercuts the fact that this random crime is what took the Waynes out, and that's why Batman became who he became. I mean, now we can look at it and go, well, wait a minute, it was an uprising. It was a social uprising. It wasn't just random crime. So would that be enough to push young Bruce Wayne over the edge to become the Batman? I don't know. Leo Milmet says, I was shocked when he shot Murray and didn't kill himself. I thought he'd totally make sense story-wise for him to kill himself on the air. Absolutely. Maybe that would have been a little too Taxi Driver-esque. But then again, so was the whole movie. Koba's here. Koba says, ending had a little V for Vendetta in it, or to it. I absolutely agree. For those who haven't seen V for Vendetta, it's based on an Alan Moore comic book. It's a great comic book, and I really like the movies. The movie. The Wachowskis produced it, and it's pretty damn good. Nathan Oswald says there's a mental illness condition called PBA, pseudobulbar affect, which causes random episodes of uncontrollable laughing and or crying. I heard about that today. Amazing. Star Wars, I want to say the Old Republic gaming. The condition would be mild laughing brain seizure. A friend of mine had them. Looked like he was hit with Joker gas. Tears would come out while he was laughing. Well, that is terrifying. I would never want that to happen to me. Darklock63 says, I see this movie as a morality play on the state of society. Simply titled Fleck, most would have stayed away. Totally agree with you. Totally agree. Part of the reason it did as well as it did is that it was a Joker movie. Gatlin Winter says, Joker was awesome, but I don't want to see a sequel. I can't see this Joker taking on the Batman. I can't either, because it would be like Joker is being beat up by, you know, somebody. I mean, his mental illness is you feel for him. You want to help him, and if he's fighting Batman, it'd be like, oh, come on, Bruce, why you got to beat up on this guy? He's had a hard life. So I think you're right about that. Jay Boogie says, one of one, Zazie Beetz is talented and ultra gorgeous. Her show Atlanta has launched multiple actors into film careers, including Lakeith Stanfield and the amazing Brian Tyree Henry. Indeed, I love Atlanta. Jay Boogie says, can you think of a show in recent memory with such a talented cast? I don't know, man. Well, I think Breaking Bad had a pretty talented cast. Can't wait to see El Camino. It's dropping soon. Wayne Edwards says, hope you feel better, John. I love this film, a case study of someone with mental health issues with a diabolical edge. I didn't think it was as dark as many said it would be. That being said, I didn't sleep well last night. Man, it's terrifying, Wayne. I mean, dream of the Joker, dream of his cackling when he's laughing uncontrollably at the most inopportune moments. That is scary. Leo Milmot says, he said you wouldn't get it. What was he thinking? God only knows what he was thinking, what was going on in his mind. Who knows? We probably wouldn't get it. All I know is I'm scared. I don't want to know. Sarah's here. Sarah says, Thomas Wayne made fun of Arthur for being an orphan and thinking they're related. So seeing his death and orphan son felt fitting to me. Yeah, I just didn't like the fact that Thomas Wayne was portrayed as such a prick. Why do you have to be such a prick? Jason Shrum says, a sequel is not in the works, but given the box office, I read maybe they will do more standalone Joker films with different directors and actors. I would actually like that. An anthology series of Joker movies. Bring it on. It'd be really interesting to see different actors and different characters take, different actors and different directors take on that character. It'd be really interesting. Big Cope 76 sent in a super chat. Leo Milmot says, inspirations, I noticed Network, Clockwork Orange, Taxi Driver, King of Comedy, Do the Right Thing, The End. What about you? You know, all of those things. I think there's even maybe a little bit of Clockwork Orange in there, a little bit. And of course, somebody said Jacob's Ladder earlier. I would say Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which was a Twilight Zone episode. But I think that you really nailed it. There's probably a lot more, but I think you nailed it. Ryan, you know, there's a movie called The Dark Backward that I was reminded of, and I was also, yeah, if you haven't seen The Dark Backward, it's not really the same thing, but the milieu kind of reminded me of the same thing. Ryan Albanese says, Joker-style Tai Chi is a thing now. I wouldn't, you know what? I wouldn't, it's probably licensed, and you have to go to Warner Brothers and pay them. But that's funny, I can believe it. The way he moved around like that. Adam Vasquez said he reminded me of you by saying comedy is subjective. Yeah, you know, I think there's an objectivity to everything. I do. I believe that in entertainment. There's an objectivity to comedy. There's an objectivity to movies. But your opinion doesn't affect the objectivity. I mean, if John's listening to me, he'd be cringing right now and we'd get into it. But John does always say that, and I don't necessarily disagree. I think comedy is a lot more subjective than, say, art. But, yeah, it really depends who you are. Obviously, clearly, Arthur Fleck is not very funny. Maybe he thought he was. Grim Joe Jaggerjack says, you could make an argument that the scene where the Joker is standing on the police car didn't happen because immediately after he's suddenly in Arkham. I agree. I don't think the end of the movie happened at all. That the uprising, the people in the streets where he's in the middle being surrounded, he was hit by that ambulance. None of that was real. I think he was probably apprehended at the TV station after he killed Robert De Niro's character, and I just don't think any of that rest of that happened. Or it's as he was being taken away, that was what he was seeing. Mr. Nobody says, by the way, if you haven't seen Mr. Nobody, fantastic movie, watch the longer director's cut. Mr. Nobody says, Arthur became Joker when he emerged from the apartment after killing his co-worker. The fact that his face is white is symbolism for the place between Arthur and the Joker. I could buy that. I'll buy that. I like that reading. Kendra Butts says, I think he became the Joker when he got out of the fridge. It was like being buried and revived. I'll buy that too. I think it's also very astute. Jordan Ching went to see Hide and Seek, The Farewell, and The Joker as they all came out Friday in the UK. You think Zazie Beetz' character was underused in the movie? In my humble opinion, yes. Well, not really, because she was more of Arthur's fantasy, and if they put her in the movie more, I mean, I liked, you know, they seem to be a little friendly in the hallway, but when you see Arthur in her apartment and she is terrified, that was all you needed to know. I thought she was really good, but I thought she was used correctly. Maybe you'd like to see more of her, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but I thought she was used correctly. JMeister25 says, in response to Benny95 about supporting characters, you can develop characters through other characters. We learn a lot about Arthur's mom through Arthur. I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Francis Conroy, wow. Eddie Burton says, sequel in modern day with Willem Dafoe's Joker. Laugh out loud. You know, again, I think another movie and a sequel or a sequel with Batman would just diminish what this movie really is. El Cid 0685 says, was Joker doing some sort of Tai Chi related moves to relax after he kills those 3 dudes in the bedroom, in the restroom? Very possibly. Joker Tai Chi, as we know, is now a thing. A Czech's Piano, thinking what Schnepp would think of this flick. You know, we've been talking about that. People have been asking. I think Schnepp would have loved this flick. I think he would have loved how it's transcended the comic book genre. I really do think he would have loved it. Edwin Perez Mendez says, best director nomination for Todd Phillips. I don't know. I think he's going to be fighting an uphill battle. It depends who else is in the running. I think definitely it's interesting. Martin Scorsese will be, for sure, for The Irishman, I think. And when he is, if Todd Phillips is, I mean, Todd Phillips took such inspiration from Martin Scorsese's movies. It'd be interesting to see. Norman Stokes says, Thomas Wayne came across like Flashpoint Batman. He did. He did come across as Flashpoint Batman. Good call, Norman. I like that. Conduit says, it was actually named Crime Alley in memory of the Waynes. Before that, it had a different name. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that alleyway was called. I didn't like that scene very much. I thought that was probably the weakest scene in the movie. It just wasn't done well. Sam Phillips says, knock, knock. Who's there? It's the police, ma'am. Your son's been hit by a drunk driver. I love that so much. So creepy and disturbing. Top 3 comic book movies for me. It was a great scene. Dapper Dave 527 says, I think that photo leaves it open for him to be Bruce's brother. Not far-fetched that Thomas Wayne was cruel and institutionalized mother to get rid of his son. But yeah, but that really makes Thomas Wayne a real villain. Bad guy. And you might be right about that. Gatlin Winter says, Joker was awesome, but I can't see this Joker being able to take on the Batman. He just doesn't seem smart enough to think of a plan to fight Batman. That was my biggest problem with the movie. I didn't see a lot of intelligence in him, and just because he sort of gets over his mental illness doesn't mean he's going to be any smarter in the long run. We shall see. Persephone Agricola says, it's plausible that he's Thomas Wayne's son. Remember her saying he made her sign papers? Makes sense. Rich man takes advantage of woman and manipulates her into signing adoption papers so he can deny their son. Hey, I'm right there with you. And I think that's probably what the intent was. I just don't like that. What that says about Thomas Wayne, man. What a dick. He's one of the evilest men in the movie, if that's the case. Emad, 1 of 2, says, I think Todd Phillips was hinting to us that there was something fishy with the letter. We see Arthur checking the mailbox multiple times, and the first time, and finding nothing in there. How did his mom all of a sudden get her hands on that letter? She doesn't look healthy enough to walk down those stairs. Yeah, I think the whole thing, I think his whole mother, I think what his mother's telling him, it's all part of the fantasy and all of his madness and craziness. I think you're absolutely right. Where did that letter come from? You know, I don't know. Maybe she wrote it even herself. You never know. Well, she did write it herself, but who knows what happened? Eric Grebner says, first time hearing the full theme over the break. Nice. It's good stuff. Big Cope 76 says, Phillips said this movie won't connect into the Batman. Phillips said this movie won't connect into the Batman movies, but it might make sense too because a clown killed Bruce's parents and he would want revenge on Joker. Could be, but again, I think by doing that, we would diminish the power of this movie. The great power of this movie is that it's removed from the comic book genre, and by having it become a Batman story too, it just becomes another comic book film. And I think one of the great joys of this movie is that it's not. It's something more than that. Javier Belmer says, man, I'd like a standalone character study of the Scarecrow, not tied to any universe, but I'd be into it. Can you imagine diving deep into fears and phobias? Well, Javier, I think that's a great idea. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Somebody asked me on my own show today about Mr. Freeze. And I'm like, but you couldn't do, it'd be weird to do a movie like this because mental illness is such a real thing. We all know about it. And, once you bring the comic bookness into it, whether it's freeze rays or costumes or things like that, it really diminishes. The funny thing about this is they set up why Arthur Fleck becomes a clown from the very beginning because he was already one. And I really like that a lot. Big Cope 76 says he might find Joker responsible for all the chaos. Well, maybe, but I don't think he was. I think it was society that keyed on him. I mean, ultimately he killed those guys. He killed the Wall Street guys. But at the end of the day, it was the society that was crazy. Mr. Nobody says, pretty sickening that after he killed for the first time, his imagination went to him having sex as he was aroused by his actions. Creepy. Very serial killer, man. This movie did not pull any punches. J. Nilbert 200 says, hey, John, why no one is talking about this issue in the movie? There are super rats living in the sewers of Gotham. Just kidding. Keep up the great work. I love the super rats. I thought it was awesome. Flicks and politics. Joker was born on top of the car when he put that bloody smile on his face. The asylum was Joker telling jokes no one would get and killing at will. Yeah, very possibly, although I don't think he actually was out on top of the car amongst that crowd. I think that was all of his fantasy. Alan Chow says, the theater I went to for Joker was shut down because of a threat. Someone called in to prevent people from seeing the film. I got a refund and found another theater, but I can't believe that happened. We live in a world full of Arthur Flecks, and I can imagine it happened. But it's too bad because the movie has a lot to say, and the very people who would do something like that should probably see it. Demetrius Kantoris says, the blood smile, best Joker moment in live action. It was amazing. That was a great moment. There's a lot of great iconic images in this movie. And that certainly is right up there at the top. Mr. Nobody says the look in Joker's eyes and face and his behavior when he first sits down on the talk show is absolutely bone-chilling. Went from mentally ill to evil. Totally agree. What a great performance. Joaquin played that to a hilt. Once he even gets to the studio, he's in his tip-top clown. I mean, it's the best clown in the world. There he is. And I agree. He was amazing. Mark C. says, hell hath frozen over. I agree with John Campea about a film over Robert Meyer Burnett. What? How dare you, Mark C. But I know why. I understand. But that's what's great about this. You can agree with either one of us, or both of us, or none of us. Just be respectful about it. That's all we ask. Luis Tomato says, Josh Brolin made a compelling post of Joker being a necessary viewing. I think so. You know, especially Thanos himself. I think Thanos could find some kinship into what Joker's thinking or Joker's feeling. Chad Furlong says, someone said the fake relationship was obvious. To the comment about kissing the pillow, that was smelling his mother's scent, not imagining Zazie. I think so too. I think you're absolutely right there. 100%. Jason Espinosa says, what's so funny? You wouldn't get it. That's life, and as funny as it may seem, some people get their kicks stomping on a dream. Great ending. Oh, yes. And I remember reading a little bit about the drama of how they got that song, too. Very interesting. But perfect way to end the film. Mr. Nobody says, I have a hard time believing he killed Zazie's character. A person being murdered down the hall is going to attract a lot of police attention. Place would have been swarming with cops. I don't know. I thought he might have. I think he felt, obviously, he thought he had a relationship with her. I think he felt a kinship with her. I don't think he necessarily killed her. I really don't. Because he knew that unlike his own upbringing, she was a good mother. She was a good woman. The movie was missing the Prince music and Party Man. This is from MR99. I'm kidding. Movie was absolutely brilliant. Joaquin was world class, and what a game changer if it wins Best Picture. Hey man, I'm right there with you. It is definitely it's a game changer nonetheless. Even if it wins Best Picture, it really is. It opens up a whole new level of what comic book movies can be and what people can do and what they can attempt. And I for one, am really looking forward to it because, you know, after the 23 movies in the MCU, where do you go from there? I don't know. Jason Espinosa says, love that the trailer gave a sense of the film without giving away the story. Refreshing going into a movie only knowing the bare minimum of a plot. You know what, Jason? 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're absolutely right. And that was certainly one of the joys of this film. Well, ladies and gentlemen, all of our audience out there, all over the world, our kind friends from around the planet, obviously you're all Joker fans. It's great to hear. What I think is the best thing about all this is, when was the last time that, you know, rather than picking apart movies or talking about how much we don't like movies, when was the last time we had such a movie that has caused such discussion and such thoughtfulness? And it's really refreshing. And I think if nothing else, Joker is going to be looked upon for years to come and debated and discussed and watched and talked about like all great art is. And as I always say, isn't it great that we live in times like now where we get a movie like Joker? Fantastic for everybody involved. Really, it truly is an amazing time we live in. Listen, my name is Robert Meyer Burnett, and I want to thank John Campea for letting me do this. I love being on the John Campea Show and interacting with all of you. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. You can find me on Instagram at RMBurnett. And you can find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and my show, Robservations, the show about something, and the adjacent website, theburnettwork.net. Thank you so much for your questions. Thanks for supporting the channel, however you do so, whether it's super chats or just being in the live chat, just participating. We very much appreciate it, and it keeps everything going. Thanks very much. And as John always says, bye-bye. I don't know if I did that well. Bye-bye.